For the past couple months, I've been going through a dilemma when it comes to work, not being able to concentrate. I would write a paragraph and then couldn't bring myself to continue. A 7-page script took me about a month to complete. Normally, that would take me about 3 to 7 days, including the research. I wasn't burned out, and I loved the subject I was writing about. I just had this intense brain fog that made it difficult to work.
All hail the algorithm, my name's Donna. Funnily enough, a lot of my peers have shared the same sentiment. They can't really focus on work. Now it's pretty obvious why this may be, but I do want to take a shallow dive and explain why. Now this type of work can't just be solved with brute force. Like, I can do menial tasks, tasks that don't require a lot of brain power, like laundry, doing dishes. What's hard for me is the work that does require brain power, and that's the writing part. And I don't mean the Wikipedia part of writing, like the gathering of information and regurgitating that in a digestible way. I mean the creative part of writing, connecting ideas together and taking psychological topics and using that to explain trends. Think about it like writing a movie versus writing a description of what you see. Writing a movie requires a lot more brain power. So let's get into why exactly it is that right now it is hard for a lot of people to focus.
I'd be willing to guess for most of you, this year particularly has been hard when it comes to focusing. Now, the reason focusing is hard generally could be answered by educational psychologist John Sweller's cognitive load theory. Without getting into the complexities of the theory, Sweller essentially explains that your brain power is finite when it comes to learning. At a certain point, it becomes ineffective to try and learn new information. You cannot continuously study without taking breaks. Because cognitive load is finite, it is also important for the educational material to be simple. For example, when instructors make diagrams, they can reduce cognitive load by placing the descriptions near the area that needs to be described, rather than having them in a corner with things that say, please refer to figure A, please refer to figure B. The act of having to move your attention back and forth takes more of a toll on your cognitive load, more than having the descriptions right where they need to be. So how does this apply to me? Because I know this, I do everything I can to reduce my cognitive load with routine. I'm definitely not as sophisticated as all those influencers who have morning routines, but I've set up automatic systems, as best that I can, so all my energy is put into my creative work. I make sure any decision that can be made the night before is made the night before. I lay out the clothes I want to wear for the next morning. Although I don't do well with lists, I at least set 1 to 2 goals of what I want to accomplish the night before. When it comes to things that have to be done in the morning like breakfast, it has to be easy and fast. On days where I know I have to write, I even take my showers the night before so I don't have to worry about it in the morning.
That's not gross. People take showers at night, right?
What I didn't take into consideration is that cognitive load is heavily affected by your emotional state. No matter how much of a good system I set up, I was no match for 2020. From Kobe Bryant dying to the pandemic, the protests, and the elections, there was just so much you could be affected by this year. 2020 made it feel like, what's the point in doing whatever I'm doing now when there are bigger things to worry about in the world? I even know many of you who follow me are creatives too, and I do stalk some of your pages, and I noticed this year wasn't a good one for creating. Peers of mine who I've always thought were on the brink of making it big put out less videos. Even if you aren't a creative, I'm sure many of you have found it hard to study or read because this year felt so heavy. So many articles were popping up about making a new routine or trying mindfulness meditation to try and fix this problem. And to be fair, it works for a bit, but maybe an hour or two later, you're snapped back into reality. I know this is how I felt.
Are you ready for the solution that'll fix this problem? Nothing. I think things like meditation and breathing techniques were good for stressors that were somewhat under my control. Like back when I went to college, when I did finals, I would do some breathing exercises or mindfulness meditation, and it would help relax me, and then I could go back and study. That was something that was in my control. But with 2020, there are multiple instances and situations that are just not under my control. Like a couple of weeks ago, I got COVID. The worst part is I didn't even get invited to any TikTokers parties. Now I'm okay, and I was gonna do an in-depth video into this, but I saw that a lot of people in LA were doing videos about it, so I didn't want to seem like I was hopping on the trend. But yeah, I'm okay now, and my quarantine has been up. But cool, right? And see, that's just an example of something that I couldn't control. An emotional burden adds a lot onto your cognitive load, and even though you want to work and be productive, it's okay if you can't. I'm sure you've seen a lot of articles as well about how this pandemic has helped boosted a lot of people's productivity. And you know, it's okay if it didn't. And so even though it's not a fix, I think the best quote, as corny as it sounds, is the quote, "This too shall pass."
I'm not actually sure where I heard this from, but why I like it is that it's a no bullshit answer. Rather than all the solutions that seem like a band-aid for a stab wound, the quote gives you a certainty in a time of uncertainty, as many like to call it for some reason. That certainty is that time moves forward. Like all the other times you've been at a low point, you'll somehow get your way out of this one, too. Feel whatever you need to feel and do whatever you need to do to get through it, because this too shall pass.
It is a corny quote that doesn't really solve anything, but just know each day it gets progressively better. And it may seem like a long time in the future from now, but this really will pass. That's the end of the video. I will see you guys next time. Stay psyched.